Hi guys, my name is Shanna Hunt. This is my second semester in the school library program at USC. This is my third class. Based on the fundamentals of technical services textbook for this class, technical services include budgeting, purchasing, human resources management, computer systems, time management, and project management. There are so many different things to consider when handling technical services in a school library. The school library is what I'm going to school for, why I'm here, so that's kind of my focus. The school librarian needs to consider the wants and needs of the students and faculty in the building when making decisions about what to include in the collection. There are so many different people's opinions to consider, and I know that you don't necessarily need to get bogged down in all of that all the time, but I do think that you do have to take those things into consideration. In a public school setting, there are also laws that you must abide by. I've been a special education teacher for the last 6 years, working with students with mild to moderate disabilities. Students with disabilities are required to be included in school activities and programs with non-disabled peers to the greatest extent appropriate. In the U.S. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, the least restrictive environment means that a student who has a disability should have the opportunity to be educated with non-disabled peers to the greatest extent appropriate. To be really technical, to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled, and special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment occurs only when the nature or severity of the disability of a child is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So what does that have to do with us as a school librarian? We run the library. Well, in a lot of elementary schools, library is considered a special. You have a time during the week when you teach those children. So you have to be able to educate them to the greatest extent possible in the least restrictive environment. Students with disabilities must be able to access materials and programs in the school library. How is that a part of technical services? Because as a librarian, it will be your responsibility to ensure that the appropriate materials are available for all of the students in your building, and that includes students with disabilities. As a special education teacher, taking my students to the library, they were never really accommodated for. They were told to just choose a book. They would always come back from the library with books that they could not read because there wasn't really, they didn't really provide things that were on their level. They didn't provide the support that the students needed to be able to find things on their level, and the kids didn't know how to do that. Sometimes kids are overstimulated when they go to the library. It's supposed to be super quiet, but they can still get overstimulated, and they didn't provide them with the tools to manage the situation. And the special education teacher is not always in the room. So as the librarian, it's going to be your job to ensure that those students are accommodated for in your setting. Next school year will be my first year out of the special education classroom and in the school library. I will be working in a 4th and 5th grade elementary school. All those students with special needs are going to be in that building with 4th and 5th graders. They may not be reading on a 4th or 5th grade reading level. They may require picture books. They may need lighting filters, reduced noise, augmented technology. Most students that require special technology accommodations will bring those items with them to the library, but it is our job to ensure that they have access to the materials and programs that they need in their school library. Based on a study by Kendra Allen that asked school librarians how well they understood special education, the facts are daunting. A majority of school media specialists reported inadequacy in their knowledge in the area of special education. They noted that limited information retrieval from an assortment of sources. They don't really know where to go to find information. They also really don't have confidence in their understanding of how to best serve those students. It's not really anything that they've studied, and they don't know how to tap into the resources that are available. They were trying to make accommodations, and these are good accommodations. I'm going to list some of those for you because they are good ideas. Repetition of instruction, adjusting your pace, adjusting the group size, using visual cue cards, moving your read aloud chair from an area where they can see out the window or see into the hallway, presenting a unit of stories that have a common theme or character. Pair students, a student with disability to a student that is non-disabled. Use big books. Use picture books that have clear illustrations. We clearly have work to do to ensure that we are including students with special needs to the greatest extent possible in the school library setting. In that same study, Kendra Allen gave some recommendations on how to best include students with disabilities. Librarians should have a collection development strategy that includes the purchase of literature in all formats for students with special needs, and she really focused particularly on autism. They recommend the use of books that contain repetitive language for read-aloud story times. In addition, they suggest using stories that illustrate a social problem or situation and then explicitly present the appropriate behavior so children can learn common social conventions. I know that a lot of times whenever you hear these things, you think of elementary schools, but those tips would even be appropriate for high schools. A lot of times in special education, you see the same behaviors that are happening in your primary, elementary, middle schools are also happening in your high schools. So it is important that the books in your collection are accessible to students even when they're in the high school. If they're on a Fontes and Pinnell level A, B, or C, it's important to have those books, and I understand that a high school library may not automatically have those. So it's going to be our job as school librarians to make sure that those students have access to those materials. The following tips are from Meeting the Learning and Information Needs of All Students, Universal Design for School Libraries. It's a study done by Katie Parker. She highlights that as media specialists in a school setting, we have to carefully consider the learning and information needs of all members of our school community, including students with disabilities. She says that school librarians should keep the 3 principles of universal design for learning in mind as they provide instruction. Collaborate with other educators and provide expertise in locating, using, and evaluating information resources. We should consider the varying learning needs, abilities, and styles of all students. The design and delivery of instruction in the school library should include multiple representations of the same information. For example, while school librarians demonstrate using subscription databases to locate information on the overhead projector, you should also be giving verbal descriptions for students that are visually impaired or blind. They're going to need that verbal cueing. You can also make sure that you include Braille resources in your library if you have students in your building that are visually impaired. As instructional partners, we need to collaborate with other educators to design authentic learning tasks and assessments. It may be more difficult for us to find the resources that we need to be able to adequately provide for students with special needs. But the special education teachers in your building, they possess more detailed knowledge concerning effective database instructional strategies for students with disabilities. They're going to have the knowledge that you need to be able to tap into to be able to provide for those students in your building. We should be able to provide both intellectual and physical access to information for students, all students in your building, non-disabled and disabled. In conclusion, when planning for your library collection, be sure to include resources for your students with special needs. You may need picture books, books on tape, even Braille to ensure that you are reaching every student in your building. Reach out to special ed professionals in your building. Experienced teachers will be able to give you ideas and offer resources that you may not have thought of before. Basically, don't forget those students when you are purchasing and managing your collection. Thanks, you guys.